Video games are built to be addictive. It doesn't matter if you're playing Call of Duty or Animal Crossing, all games are created to engage the player for as long as possible. The news constantly features story after story of children being unable to tear their eyes away from a screen. Teenagers are spending more and more time in their rooms playing Valorant and CSGO, and the loneliness rates worldwide are at an all-time high. But despite this, game development companies continue to fill their games with loot boxes and rewards to keep players hooked for as long as possible. And players don't argue, instead they log thousands of hours in their favorite game without blinking an eye. It's time we take a step back and consider the implications video game addiction might have. It's pretty easy to joke about video game addiction, especially for games like League of Legends, CSGO, Valorant, or even your mum playing Candy Crush. But it's important to remember that addiction is a mental disorder, and mocking its victims might only worsen the issue. A massive number of studies have been conducted on the effects of video game addiction. We generally understand the downsides to something like alcoholism that has proven negative tolls on your body, but video games are a relatively new addiction. Over time, we've examined the role of different personality factors, comorbidity factors, and biological factors, and their association with gaming addiction. In 2008, a research duo decided to understand the possible consequences of excessively playing MMORPGs. These are massively multiplayer online role-playing games such as World of Warcraft, EVE Online, or Lost Ark. Online games typically have a far more drastic effect on someone's addiction as it grows into an internet addiction. The result concluded that individuals who spend time playing World of Warcraft are often neurotic and introverted. These are fine characteristics to have in a person, and they're things that everyone goes through. However, excessive time spent in a game like World of Warcraft will worsen these issues drastically. Social situations seem foreign and frightening, and players lose the ability to make real-life friends. This is genuinely a really bad thing. Before video games, this was far less prevalent of an issue, being socially inept to the point where you experience major depression and anxiety. Even leaving the house will have massive effects throughout someone's life. Addiction is debilitating, and this study proved the severity of these issues. On top of that, multiple studies have shown video game addiction to correlate with aggression and hostility. This is an old debate by now, but you just can't argue with the facts. In 2007, a group of researchers published an article that examined the relationship between online game addiction and aggression. Their results indicated that aggression and narcissism is widely prevalent, whereas self-control is little or non-existent. Video games almost definitely cause violence. Okay, add that to the list. Study after study after study all conclude that video game addiction can cause neuroticism, aggression, schizoid tendencies, loneliness, lack of self-control, low self-esteem, low emotional intelligence, low agreeableness, social phobia, and even physical consequences like auditory hallucinations, epileptic seizures, and encopresis. I'll let you search that one up. And this isn't affecting a small group of people. This is affecting a substantial part of the upcoming generation. And the worst part is that game development companies are entirely aware of these implications, but they continue to conduct studies in order to understand how they can make their games more addictive. Call of Duty released the online service Call of Duty Elite, a soon-to-be shut-down online service for social media. Not only did this add an entirely new layer to the addiction, but it also served as another opportunity for Activision to monitor player behavior and determine what players couldn't stop playing. Companies like Blizzard with Overwatch just don't care if people don't like their game. All they care about is how to foster and facilitate addiction. Because this field is so loosely regulated, games continue to have loot boxes and gambling mechanics that turn a video game addiction into a gambling addiction. For decades, video games have grown more and more capable, and we've seen releases of some of the best games of all time. But during this time, they've also grown increasingly predatory and increasingly manipulative. And so, why is it that video games are so addictive? To understand this, we need to understand a bit more about addiction. According to Professor Carlo C. Di Clement, addictions are learned habits that, once established, become difficult to extinguish even in the face of dramatic and, at times, numerous negative consequences. consequences. Addiction, by the way, isn't actually always a bad thing. Positive addiction certainly exists, where one can become addicted to positive behavior, which develops the character and the body. It could even be argued that gaming addiction isn't inherently negative, as it comes with many positive side effects like cognitive stimulation, increased reflexes, and a social aspect. Video games take advantage of two major exploits to our brain. The first is rewards. As humans, we love receiving rewards. Whether that's cash, a new cosmetic, or even just a bit of in-game currency, it'll give us a little happy feeling. I think a really good example of this isn't actually a video game, but the rapidly growing online store, Temu. Temu is an online marketplace like Amazon, but ships goods directly from China, meaning it offers drastically reduced prices. But the thing that differentiates Temu from something like Wish.com is the massive gamification of online shopping. You get rewards from browsing, from adding things to your cart, and even just random rewards sent to your email account that offer incredibly steep discounts, like 50% off or more, but only for the next 15 minutes. You're constantly rewarded for using the site, and those rewards save you money. That is, if you spend any money in the first place. And games have heaps of rewards too. It doesn't even have to be intentional. It's just the nature of playing a game that you enjoy. Seeing something you haven't seen before, like a new dialogue in Stardew Valley or a new optimization in Satisfactory, gives you that reward. Similarly, although to a greater extent, loot boxes in CSGO or unlocking the battle pass in Fortnite also give you that reward, with the added element of developers making money off your addiction. But the other reason for addiction is discussed far less, but is arguably even more present. Gaming offers an opportunity to disassociate with your life. It isn't a coincidence that the most addictive games are often online games without a definitive end. Becoming immersed in Dota 2 or League of Legends, games with seemingly endless content is an escape for many. There's a new disease sweeping our youth, and it took the lives of more than 162,000 American citizens, more than cancer or strokes. That is social isolation. Loneliness or perceived loneliness can lead to many psychiatric disorders, and perhaps the most common is addiction. This might come in the form of drug or alcohol abuse for older generations, but for newer generations, it can take the form of gaming addiction. According to a 2013 study, video game addicts scored significantly higher than non-addicts in depression and loneliness. A lot of addicts see the game as a substitute companion, and for many, shaking that dependency can feel daunting and even impossible. So there must be some solution, right? Well, fortunately, it's not all bad. The growing prevalence of video game addiction does mean that we are experimenting with more ways to treat it. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is being used to ease addicts off video games slowly. From 2011 to 2021, South Korea implemented a law prohibiting children under the age of 16 to play online video games between the hours of 12 AM and 6 PM. China and Vietnam followed with similar laws that attempted to combat children's online game addiction. South Korea's law was abolished due to its strict nature and lack of freedom for the children. The education minister stated, "The ability of children to decide for themselves and protect themselves has become important more than anything." But these laws are massively controversial and don't truly address the root of the problem. It's not the fault of the kid that they can't stop playing video games, it's the game itself. These games are designed to be addictive, and until laws are passed to limit certain elements, things like loot boxes, random in-game drops, and daily login rewards, addiction will continue to be a massive issue. The most you can do is to be conscious of these tactics and how they might be impacting you and the people around you. I don't know how much I can stress this, addiction is debilitating. It's known for ruining relationships and taking control of someone, and video game addiction is no different. But instead, there is constant idolization of high playtimes. Showcasing that you've played a game for 2,000 hours is not something to be proud of. It's like showcasing all the money you've lost gambling or all the brain cells you've lost drinking. It's taking the worst part of addiction and being proud of it. And until people can understand that, companies will continue to make their games addictive, and consumers will continue not to care. Somewhat ironically, I have developed my own game that I promise is not nearly as addictive, but is still very good. It's called FishTDX, and it's a roguelike tower defense game. I'll chuck some links in the description to it, as well as some gameplay. Please go and check it out if you haven't already. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.